Are you ready for the first part of your Explore Art lesson for this week? I hope so. For those of you that have been in my art class, you know what's coming. For those of you who have not, this is the part of the class at the beginning where I talk about what we are doing and why. I like to give a brief history of where our form of art came from, popular uses for it. If we're studying a particular artist, we learn cool new things about the artist. We learn about times that were important in history that made this kind of art that we're working on popular or famous. It's just a little segment where we learn about what we're doing, why we're doing it, where it came from. Not only does it just help you get more attached to your work, gives you a little more heart behind what you're doing. It's not just a project. If you know a little bit of history behind it, it kind of becomes something that you're actually trying as an artist. But it also is a great way to give you something to talk about. It makes you kind of a cooler person. You're welcome. Now we learn fun stuff, and I like you to be able to share it when you're out in the community or you're out with your family or friends, to say something fun about something that you see out, because there's art everywhere. You will always see art, and the more you know, the more you grow, and the more beautiful the world is around you. So this is the part where we learn, and then hopefully we take our lesson in with us when we start doing the creative crafting part, okay? So for this next 2-week segment, we are going to be doing a ripped magazine art collage. And when you're looking at the stuff that we were doing in class this Friday, or when you look at the stuff behind me, while it looks like it's this hip, new, modern kind of art form, the truth is this is an ancient art technique that was developed in 8th century Japan. Yeah, that's right, 8th century Japan. This is actually an art form known as Chigiri. Chigiri-e or Kiri-e. The word Chigiri means, the direct translation in Japanese means torn or ripped. The word e, which is just an e, means picture, or in our case, we'll call it art. Okay, so Chigiri-e would be the ripped or torn art. The word kiri means to cut. So if we said Kiri-e, it would be cut art. Now, since we are using paper, this would be like torn or ripped paper, or cut paper art. Okay? Now you learned a little Japanese too. You're welcome. All right. Anyway, this is a type of art that came in, again, 8th century Japan, between 8th and 11th century, during the period called the Heian period. This is a very special form of artwork that was done with handmade washi paper. Not only was it handmade, but it was also hand dyed. Okay, kind of like this. So it was very fancy, very labor intensive. This is a paper that comes from a mulberry plant, which is very fibrous. They still make fancy paper like this from the same plant because of the texture and the strength of it, because it's a very strong paper and it takes a long time to make, but it is beautiful. Now, during the Heian period, this would typically be what you would see. Now, these are obviously modern versions of what you might have seen, but it would typically be something in nature, recreated in nature. They like to do bamboo, flowers, trees, water, using the torn paper, layered upon layered. Obviously, we're looking at Mount Fuji, beautiful Mount Fuji, and goldfish, traditional things that would be done in, I guess, an Asian watercolor. These were kind of meant to mimic watercolor, but make them a little more fancy and a lot more expensive and beautiful. So if you can see these these are more modern, of course, you can still see that there is the fibers in the pulled paper. Right here, you can see it really, really good. And you can see how they've built up plants and made water with them. If you're looking at the playlist that I included for this torn collage lesson, I actually included a person using washi paper doing this form of Chigiri-e, so that you can see as well. The neat part about this, and the thing that I think makes this form of art really special, is it was often times done with a beautiful calligraphy incorporated to it, so like the beautiful calligraphy work done on the side, or poetry. And during the Heian period, that was kind of something special. They actually, the very famous Genji scrolls are known for being these beautiful textured scrolls, and they incorporated this beautiful Chigiri style on there with the beautiful poetry and writings on the side. I think visually, and this is a wonderful and beautiful way to see art, because watercolor is beautiful in itself, but watercolor alone is just, the watercolors that kind of soak into the paper. With Chigiri-e, it's like looking at that same beauty of the watercolor, but it has that layered texture, so it comes off the paper, so it really is pleasing to the eye. It makes it special, it looks special. But I can only imagine that if there's some beautiful poetry being read to you while you're looking at something this beautiful, and you're looking at the beautiful calligraphy work of that beautiful poem, how many senses artistically would be full of joy, being able to appreciate all the beauty that you're hearing, that you're seeing, that you're taking in. It is just a really special form of art. So let me sidebar right here really quickly, because I want you to see that, yes, I'm taking Recycled Love Your Art Month very seriously. Actually, we're working from my garage, so this is just how I roll. But I am recycling this little blackboard. I had it, it has a little chunk taken out of it, but you know what? It's very useful. It is fulfilling a purpose and a need, and I'm recycling. So here you go. You can recycle with anything. Okay, now back to the Chigiri. Something cool about this form of art is not only is the picture really pretty that you can create by ripping these beautiful papers, but the art of actually making the paper is a pretty big deal. Because it's so labor intensive, people stopped making paper as much, so it was really hard to find after a while. But in the 1900s, paper making started to come back, and it came into the form of Tengu Joshi paper. This is very special. Again, it's a handmade paper with the long fibers, the fibrous material, so they also use the mulberry plant for this. But as it became more popular, of course, like with anything that is handmade, you need craftsmen. To train to be a Tengu Joshi paper maker, you would actually have to train for 3 years under a great master. Does that sound familiar, kids that have had me before? Yeah, just like the famous artists had to train under great masters as children, this is kind of the same concept. If you want to be a craftsman of any kind, you usually find somebody to train under. But 3 years of training would be required to become a Tengu Joshi paper maker, and you would be trained to make and build the fibrous paper, and not only that, you can hand dye it, and it's a beautiful form of art. Nowadays, though, we also have machines that can do the same thing, but it's not quite as special. These are handmade papers, and I think that they are special and fabulous, just like this. I love paper because, whether they be very expensive handmade papers or whether they be magazine papers, you can always turn a beautifully gifted paper product, because when you're working with it, it has to be handmade, right? Like if someone makes you something out of paper, they've actually put their own hands into it, their own creativity and their own heart into it, and I think that makes it very special. So nowadays when people use this kind of paper, because it is so durable and thin and just beautiful, it gets used a lot. Designers use it for like home decor. You see this used in the backdrop of those Asian screens that you guys know, and lanterns. But this is definitely kind of a part of the Japanese culture, is beautiful handcrafted papers and beautiful handcrafted delicate things. Your quick fast fact about this wonderful style, the Tengu Joshi paper. This happens to be some of the strongest paper in the world. It is super thin, but because it has all of these fibers in it, it actually makes it very, very strong while being very, very thin. And it's also translucent, so it means you can kind of see behind it. So it's really that thin, but also strong enough to be used for repair work. A lot of paintings are repaired using this particular paper. But it is also the choice of designers and people that make stuff because it is a little more durable. So if you are going to be doing a screen or creating a paper lantern, using this paper would definitely make it a tougher piece that can stand up to some of the elements or stand up to some of the hands and stuff that get near it. But it is, again, just a special, beautiful form of art to be able to use paper. Of course, I love paper. This is one of the reasons why. So that, I guess, will conclude your learning portion. If you have any questions, or if you really think learning about Chigiri-e or Kiri-e is something special to you and you want to learn more, now you can. You know what it's called, and you can do a little research on your own. For our project, we will be doing some cutting for the embellishing, kind of like I did with that tutu, which would give us the kiri form. The chigiri will be definitely what we do all around, the ripping and the tearing. Let me see if there's anything else I want to add in. Yes, there is. We talked about washi paper, and how washi paper is so difficult and hard to use. When we look and think about, I'm sure some of you are going, washi, what do I know that name from? Because you know about washi tape. Okay, this is your other quick tidbit. Washi tape also came from Japan. This is very famous, like it's supposed to be paper, but with lots and lots of cool and funky designs on them. These are great because they're already sticky, so you can go ahead and embellish cups and trays and make things really fancy and pretty, but a little more streamlined. So it says washi tape, but you cut it, so I would call this like you would do kiri art with this probably, because it's more clean, not ripped and torn like a chigiri. So there's your fast fact about what you might see in the stores available now. That came from Japan. It's pretty popular and famous now, but now you know. So I will be going through your materials list next, which is going to be a lot of fun. It might be a little longer than my normal materials list because I'm also going to include recyclable materials that you can start using now at your house if you want to start saving up for different projects. So that should be a lot of fun too. But this concludes part 1 of your Chigiri-e and Kiri-e magazine, magazine collaging lesson.